Good evening and welcome, everyone. Welcome back, I think, to some of you. This is the second night of our 2022 virtual spring speaker series. Some of you may have been with us for the first session just prior to March break. And if you are joining us again, welcome back. If you're here for the first time, then welcome to you, and we're really pleased that you're here. We call this speaker series Helping Our Kids Thrive. And the first two sessions, the first one, as I mentioned, prior to March break, and this one tonight, we're very, very happy to have Dr. Andrew B. Campbell, or Dr. ABC, with us talking about equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so to get us underway tonight, I'm going to ask our special assignment teacher for religious and family life education, Sarah Cassidy, who's here with us tonight, if she would lead us in the land acknowledgement.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. When we acknowledge the land, we acknowledge so much more than the geographical boundaries that we find ourselves. So tonight, let us consider the interconnectedness of all of creation and our place in it. Let us consider the historical actions of settlers and our current relationship to all of the land and the inhabitants of the land, and all of the consequences these actions have had and continue to have to this day. Tonight, I position myself as a settler on this land. I acknowledge that I have benefited and continue to benefit from the legacy of colonization and from broken treaty promises. I acknowledge that this evening, I personally am gathered to learn on the traditional territories of Indigenous people. We honor the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee peoples. However, we also acknowledge First Nation, Métis, and Inuit peoples from across Turtle Island, because the goals of colonization to displace, erase, and sever culture means that there is so much more we don't know about the original inhabitants and caretakers of this land. This territory is covered by the Williams and Upper Canada treaties. As a settler, a Canadian, and a person of faith, I make this acknowledgement of the land in recognition that we're called to be allies, partners, and good neighbors who actively listen to and learn from Indigenous communities, and my own personal commitment tonight to setting intentions to continue this work in a good way, even when it is uncomfortable. I commit myself to knowing my own story, our shared story, and the stories from before our time on this land, so that the story we continue to weave today may be one of justice and peace for all. And I invite everyone who is joining us tonight to take a moment to consider your own personal relationship to the land, where you're situated today, and what your intentions to honor relationships with Indigenous peoples in a good way are, and what is your own personal action in the work. Because as we know, when we think about truth and reconciliation, our words mean nothing without action. And so I'll leave that with you tonight.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to offer a prayer, and I would like us all, please, to keep in our hearts the Court family from Belleville, who are members of our school system, and all of their friends and family. The Court family were, as you may know, involved in a tragic accident while on March break in Florida, and two of their children succumbed to injuries as a result of that accident. And they are members of the communities of St. Joseph Catholic Elementary School and Nicholson Catholic College in Belleville. A really, really tough time for our system and for those families and everyone that knows them, and those two school communities. So please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. I'm going to offer our current pastoral theme prayer, which is the Beloved Children of God prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Loving God, you see us and love us as we are, beautifully and wonderfully made. Help us to see ourselves and others with your same loving eyes. Help us to fully understand that you are always with us, even when we feel alone. Help us to accept your unconditional love, even on the days when we feel unloved. Help us to joyously and freely live like we're loved. Guided by the Holy Spirit, may we be a community that lifts each other up and instills hope with our words and actions, so we may share God's unconditional love with everyone that we meet. We ask this through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. And I'm really pleased that we have our other student trustee, Alyssa Pfeiffer, with us tonight. And Alyssa is going to introduce Dr. Andrew B. Campbell, our guest speaker for the evening. Alyssa, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, thank you. Dr. Andrew B. Campbell, or DR.ABC, is a graduate of the University of Toronto with a PhD in Educational Leadership, Policy, and Diversity. He's an Ontario certified teacher and has been an educator for over 25 years in Jamaica, the Bahamas, and Canada. He is presently an academic coordinator and faculty member in the Master of Teaching program at OISC at the University of Toronto and an adjunct assistant professor at Queen's University in Professional Master of Education. He has authored 2 books, Teachable Moments with Dr. ABC, A Spoonful for the Journey, and The Invisible Student in the Jamaican Classroom. He also has a number of publications in the journals and a book chapter focusing on areas EDI, 2S LGBTQI+ issues in education, racism, anti-Black racism, and educational leadership. He has presented at numerous conferences and has delivered many presentations as a workshop facilitator, keynote, and motivational speaker. He loves people, food, fashion, traveling, and bringing community together for a good meal.
Thank you so much, Alyssa. Thank you so much for your welcome. Thank you so much for your introduction. It's good to be here. Just want to also, present and share my condolences as well with the loss that we have experienced. And it's good to be here to engage and continue the conversation we started last week. It's so funny because the topic, and I didn't discuss that with Sarah or Michael before, but because it's a big umbrella of equity, diversity, and inclusion. But the topic that I'm focusing on this evening for us is growing in cultural competence. That all of us is about, and I want you to realize how intentional this conversation is going to be, because it's about all of us growing. It's about all of us growing. And remember, for those who missed last time, the recording will be shared. This one is being recorded. You'll get to share it. There's another 2 sessions. I'm happy to see all the parents here. And remember, the chat is also open. So feel free to type a question in the chat. Feel free to type a comment in the chat. Feel free to engage with me in the chat as we continue this conversation this afternoon. We want to look at cultural competence, but something really, really stood out to me as we started the conversation. And I'm happy this session is being recorded, because the first thing that stood out to me was the land acknowledgement. And I made a note of it on my notepad. So you understand, I put Sarah's name there and I made some notes there because it was so important to me. I took my red marker to make a note there. Because as I was listening to Sarah, I said to myself, this is a major way for all of us to begin engaging in that cultural competence. And what is cultural competence? Cultural competence, which we'll discuss in a couple of minutes, is a continuum. It's about how we are growing in cultural awareness, how we are growing in intercultural communication, how we are growing to learn about each other, how we are growing to respect each other, how we are growing to open ourselves to understand differences. That is what it is really about. And as I caught on about the second sentence and listened to Sarah reading the land acknowledgement, and I said to myself, I'm so happy it is being recorded, because I would love a copy of just that section. Listen to the intentionality behind the land acknowledgement. Why am I talking about the land acknowledgement so much? And this is important as we listen. I'm sure you heard, I'm sure you have been to events, I'm sure you have seen on television or other places where people are doing land acknowledgement, right? First Nations, Truth and Reconciliation, all that kind of stuff. And you may ask yourself as a parent, because you're not in a school every day, what is this about? So what Sarah did was an amazing example of the land acknowledgement. But what was powerful is her personal reflection on why she's doing it. I want to repeat that. What was powerful was her personal reflection on why she was doing it. A lot of us, we do these things, but we don't know why. We are not committed. We hear somebody say it and we just do it. Oh, let's do it. Let's just read it. But what Sarah did was an example of what all of us need to have, that personal commitment to be intentional about why am I doing this? So I want to just really underline that and how beautiful that is as we are talking about the topic of growing in cultural competence. If you ask many of us will say we don't know much about First Nations. We don't know much about treaties. We don't know much about the history of colonization. We don't know much about the history of how our First Nations people were displaced and the impact of that displacement today. And so that honesty, that humility is what we're talking about. So let me share a few pictures with you so you can get where we're going to go. The first one is a beautiful road, right? Beautiful road. And it's about equity journey. So if I ask all of us, where are you in this equity? Last week, I had a great conversation, and you'll get the recording about how we engage our children, our family in conversations about equity, diversity, and inclusion. On April the 7th, we're going to have another speaker who is going to talk about emotional growth during the pandemic. On April the 11th, there'll be another speaker talking about the power of play and building resilience. All of that comes together as we talk about the theme, helping our children, helping our kids, helping our children to thrive. One of those personal ways is, how do we get to see the world through equity lens, through a more inclusive lens? I want to keep it very simple like that. How do we? And so I put a road there because I want to ask all of us, and you can jump in the chat box and answer me if you please, to say, do we think the road to learning about differences is like this? Simple road, double line, no overtaking, cool, grass. I can see that the wind may be blowing because you see the trees, look out, they're a little bit bent, and just a cool road, no traffic, no excitement. Does anyone feel like this is a typical journey? Let's use the word journey. You could put a yes or a no in the box. Do anyone feel like this is a typical journey of how we will get to learn about differences and equity and the things around us, wars and hate and so many phobia happening around us? You know, I see a comment in the box. No, thank you, Leah, for starting us off. No. So what I'm going to do, Leah, in the same journey, I'm going to show you another picture. And I see other persons jumping in the chat, and I want to say thank you. I see Tracy, I see it. The thank you. The road is too smooth. No journey. It's not that kind of journey. Thank you, Kerry. I see that. Thank you so much for jumping in. And I see other persons are jumping in, and I appreciate that. So let's look at another picture. This is it, actually. And I really want to be, if you notice, if you compare last week to this week, I'm at the last time to this time, I am being very intentional because I want to zero in on the fact that I do believe that we are all on a journey. We are all honest and intentional about we want to be better persons. We want to be better parents. We want to be our kids to be, globally conscious. Our kids to have that empathy that is lacking. Our kids to be respectful to others. That's what it's boiled down to. It's nothing bigger than that. That is what it's boiled down to. But I want to show you this road. It is a little bit more riddled and chaotic and messy. It's a little bit more intense and tense, I like that word, than that's the previous picture. When we think about topics like homophobia, issues like trans issues, hate in schools, you look on CP24, you heard about 8, anti-Semitism, a swastika in this school, persons using the N-word to each other and to persons. We hear about persons telling people to go back where you come from. We hear about persons calling the police because you don't understand something about a difference. We see mental health issues. We see drugs and violence. We see refugee issues. We see students who are not doing well. We see a lot of stuff going on, and it can get to us as educators. Sometimes we feel the pressure. As parents, I hope you also feel the pressure, because you're part of a world. You may be a part of a perfect world, and let me be very honest about that. You may live on a cul-de-sac that is just great. I'll be frank with you. I don't live in a cul-de-sac, but my community where I live in an apartment, townhouse complex, not apartment, townhouse, and it's gorgeous. One gate in, one gate out, one entrance in, one entrance out, beautiful homes, just gorgeous, just really beautiful. I know some of you live on great cul-de-sac and nice communities and nice homes, but I want us to understand that that is just not the entire world. There are children today who don't know if they're going to have dinner this evening. There are children who, because of sexual violence and abuse, are hurting. There are persons, because of their identities and because how they identify, they are hurting. There's trauma. There's racism. There's anti-Black racism. There's anti-Semitism. There's war. There are those stuff happening. So I took this minute to kind of spend that time because I want to center the idea that in order for us to navigate all of this, we have to grow in cultural competence. I know you just got the connection. In order for us to navigate all of this, we have to grow in cultural competence. My last picture is this one. And this one shows a perfect car park. Everybody's parked up. This is not a good picture. This is a bad picture. This is even worse than the first one, because when we're going to do the work of cultural competence, we can't be parked up. We can't be parked up. We have to be on the road. Though the road is this dangerous and this treacherous, and it's hurting and harmful, and you can feel the pressure, we have to go there. So how do we get to cultural competence? I'm going to share with you right now. How do we get to cultural competence? There are many ways. There are many, many ways to get to a place of what we call cultural proficiency. Notice the arrow going in one direction. Notice the growth. I'm going to show you a video in a minute so you can see that. How do we get to that place? There's a lot of ways to do that. The truth is, this evening is a perfect example. This evening is a perfect example. What we have this evening are persons gathered. You are gathered right here to be a part of the learning. So you have gathered right here to be a part of the learning. That's intentional. That's why you are here. That is a way to gain cultural competence. Reading books, watching certain documentaries and films, and learning about other people and other cultures. The books you are reading, being intentional about, I'm going to read a book about First Nations people written by someone who's First Nations. I'm going to read Dr. Campbell's story written by Dr. Campbell. I want to learn about these people. I don't know about these people. I don't understand these people. And it's okay to say that. I want to let you know it's okay to say that I do not understand these people over there. But your intention is, I want to learn about those people. And so you're using a process called culturally relevant, responsive growth. You're using cultural competence. And so I'm going to show you a little video clip. Let's use this first little video clip. And what we're going to do in this video clip is just show you a little cartoon about the different levels of competency. So competence. So let's get into it. All right. All right, so thank you so much. So you get to see that. You get to see that the fundamental messages in cultural competence, the understanding of cultural differences, assisting people to see different, valuing people and their differences and their culture. That is what it's all about. And when I send the video, I will also use the opportunity to send a copy of this video itself so you can get to review it again. I'll send it as an individual video along with this recording itself. So that's what we're talking about this afternoon, cultural competence, our idea in how we are going to move through growth. So this stuff really about us learning and growing. A lot of times when you see issues happen out there, you realize that a lot of us, we lack cultural humility, right? We lack cultural sensitivity. We lack that ability to say, let me learn about difference. Let me respect difference. And so what is cultural competence? Cultural competence is about our will and actions to build understanding between people, to be respectful and open to different cultural perspectives, strengthen cultural security, and work towards equality in opportunity. That is it. It is the will and our action to understanding between people. That is that part. Our will and action to build understanding between people. So I want us to understand the intentionality of this very, very brief conversation. Are we working? How are we working to build that level of understanding between differences? Two words for me are powerful: your will and your actions. And cultural competence is really about relationships. It's not about a continuum. It's not about a piece of paper, really. It's not about a continuum and an arrow. It's about relationships. So when you meet someone who is different, let's get into it. When you meet someone who is different, where are you? Where are you? Are you at that place of cultural destructiveness to be like, well, I don't care. Go back where you come from. You shouldn't be here. You're not Canadian. Is that your conversation? Is your conversation one of cultural incapacity, where you see the person, you know they are different, but you actually do not even acknowledge them? A lot of us, we see people, but we do not acknowledge people. We don't want them on our team. We don't want them in our schools. We don't want them to be hired. I remember parents, as I'm speaking to parents, I remember parents once at a school I was at, there was a daycare, and the school was about 95% white population. And there was a daycare attached to the school. And in the daycare, the rules are different. And so a number of out of zone, so to speak, students came to that daycare. Many of them were racialized. And there was a discussion about, will the daycare children get into kindergarten? The discussion really was saying, we don't want these racialized children in our school. That was really the discussion. They were not saying it like that, but that was really the discussion at the end of the day. That cultural incapacity, you don't belong here. I don't want you here. And then we move to the cultural blindness and the cultural sensitivity. What we want to do is to go to a place at the top three parts of the continuum. If I want us all to at least be at cultural sensitivity, right? So cultural competence, another definition, is the ability of a person to effectively interact, work, and develop meaningful relationships with people of various cultural backgrounds. That is it. Cultural competence, the ability of a person to effectively interact, work, and develop meaningful relationships with people of various cultural backgrounds. Gaining cultural competence is a lifelong process of increasing self-awareness, developing social skills and behaviors around diversity, and gaining the ability to advocate for others. Now, here comes a major part for me. It goes beyond tolerance, which implies that one is simply willing to overlook differences. Instead, it includes recognizing and respecting diversity through our words and actions in all contexts. There again, come back the term words and actions. So I want us to be intentional when we think about cultural competence. We think about how will I grow? I just said it. You're learning about other people. How you plan to do that? Through being intentional about something like a land acknowledgement. Being intentional about, let me read a book about First Nations people. Let me read a book about Dr. Campbell and Jamaica. As a matter of fact, let me watch a good documentary about that. Let me ask Dr. Campbell about that. Let me speak to this person who identifies as that. I don't understand this pronoun stuff. Everywhere I go, I'm hearing this pronoun stuff. Let me ask questions from a pure place of knowing, a pure place of curiosity, a pure place of wondering. Let me ask those questions. Wow, this person is from a different country. That person speaks with an accent. Let me engage that conversation because I want to develop cultural competence. Right? So the next point I want to make is that it's a process. It is a process. So nobody's going to walk out of here this evening and say, well, I went to this talk, the spring series. I heard this gentleman, Dr. ABC, and he was talking about cultural competence. I feel like now I'm just amazing. I'm culturally proficient. We're all at different parts of the journey. Let me go back to that. We're all at different parts of the journey. I guarantee the 36 of us in the room, we are all at different parts. We're all at different parts. My encouragement is that I hope we are all at least the top 3 parts. Because the bottom 3, we are in trouble. So I hope we're at the top 3 parts. We're going to talk about that some more. So why do we need cultural competence? Societies are increasingly becoming globalized. Remember, if you are going to live and navigate in the society, you need to have that cultural competence. The persistence of issues around cross-cultural discontact, discrimination, and related challenges, it's happening. As I said to you before, last week when I was right here with you, I remember I shared with you, when you watch the first video, you'll see that there was news that very day on CP24 talking about 2 separate cases in 2 schools of hate incident. One of them anti-Semitism, one of them another anti-Black racist issue. These things are happening around us. We see anti-Asian hate. We see anti-Asian sentiment. We see that. We see those things happening. We hear the kind of deficit language and hate words going around. We have seen it right here in Ontario, 8 crimes. I think we have, in the last couple of years, we have examples of 3. The last one we saw was the family, the Muslim family that was murdered by someone. We see the things happening. And so we need to grow in that cultural competence so we can be effective. And next one is a discrimination and bias in various forms. They're hurtful. You need to be able to say to your family, your kids, your family, that this is hate. This is discrimination. This is not nice. This is bullying. And say it with a conviction that your kids listening to you genuinely know that this is what it is. Because grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, auntie, big brother, big sister said so. And you say it from an honest, genuine place. The next thing is a change in face of our classrooms. I want to say something very, very important. Listen to me carefully, parents, to this statement I'm going to make. The classrooms are changing. The children with which with the children at school with which your child used to play with, they are also changing. There are schools that I know, and their principals will tell you that the population of the school has changed. They had no racialized kids in certain schools. Now they are. Your children are going to those schools. How are they dealing with and learning and appreciating and valuing and respecting their classmates that are different from them? Classmates that have different accents, classmates that speak other languages. How are you showing them and teaching them that? There's ongoing issues of racism and anti-Black racism in institutions. How are you teaching them and sharing them that it's a big, big world out there, bigger than your bedroom, bigger than our house, bigger than the garden, bigger than our cottage, bigger than our neighborhood, bigger than our cul-de-sac? How are we doing that? I like what you said, Matthew. I see your comment there. You have to open it up. There have to be conversations about difference. Not everybody looks like me. Not everybody looks like you. How are we having those? Those are the conversations where I want to start with. Don't you think I want to start with anything major? I want to start with those conversations. So this is why cultural competence. Now there's another one I'm going to show you. So this is recorded. You can see that one. A next list. And this list comes to us from a policy brief of the National Education Authority, 2008, long ago, 2008, almost 13 years ago. And this is also by Guzman. Students are more diverse than ever. Culture plays a critical role in learning. And for those parents who don't understand it, I'll tell you right now, today I watched a lesson on geography. Geography. And when they were doing the geography lesson, the map was on the board and the children were asking questions about the location of Ukraine to certain countries. What do you think the teacher is going to do? Oh, we're not talking about Ukraine today. We're not talking about Ukraine. You're teaching map reading. A student who is intelligent and critical thinker points out the location of a place that is war-torn right now on a map. These are real conversations. What we're going to do, take off Ukraine off the map when we're teaching because there's a war going on. So you can get away. And I see parents do it all the time, trying to get away from the conversation, only for it to just bubble up. I'm going to share another very, very strong story. So my nephews, I have grandnephews, not nephews, grandnephews, they go to the Catholic board in Ontario, different Catholic board, not your board, another Catholic board. And I went to see them. This was about 2 years ago. And the mom said to me, she would love to ask me how to have the conversation with our two boys, they're twin boys, about certain sexual orientation, diversity. She says, you know, they are seeing difference around them, and she wants to make sure she have the conversation with them now. They are in grade 2 at that time. Listen to me carefully, everybody. So she asked me that question. Let's say she asked me the question on a Saturday or a Sunday, a weekend, because I know I went by them on a weekend. And I said to her, well, as a mom, You have to own the conversation. You have to figure out how you want to start the conversation. You have to figure out what language you wish to use. And I said to her, go and do the conversation before anybody else. You start, you're mommy. You have the mommy talk with your two boys. Before we could finish and we went on, she called me back the next 2 days after. So this was a Sunday. She called me, I think it was a Tuesday or the Wednesday. She said to me, what if I tell you, my son, the boys came home, two twin boys, and they said their friend in their class, a friend in their class is now a girl. I'm using that for a particular reason. I'm not going to unpack it, parents. Don't worry, I'm not going to unpack it because I don't wish to unpack it for you. What I want to do is to place on you in this conversation why it's important that you as a parent be engaged to have conversations about otherness with your children. They do not live all their lives inside your house. I want to repeat that. Your children do not live all their lives inside your house. They go to school, they go to the park, they're going to go to Canada Wonderland when it's open up, they go to camp, they join scouts, they join competition, they go to sports center, they go to university, they go to colleges, they travel, and they are going to see difference. I've been away this last week to Aruba. I was at a hotel with a whole bunch of people with their children all over. They saw many different kinds of people on the beach, many different kinds of couple on the beach. What are the conversations you are having with your children about differences so that they will learn that other people exist, they are different from me, I don't need to be like them, but I need to respect who they are. That is what we're talking about. Cultural competence. Coming to the place where we recognize. So back to the language. Cultural competence leads to cultural competent educators are better equipped to teach. Cultural competence help address student achievement. Cultural competence reinforces democratic ideals. And it helps us to be more accountable. So it's important. So we're going to move right along in this conversation. And so this is a continuum. This is another version of it. I've kept different versions of it because I want us to grow into the conversation. We have a couple more minutes before we wrap up. And I want you to see the same words are there, but now we have some examples and some definitions. When you review the video, you'll get to see them. You'll see them. Cultural destructiveness, cultural incapacity, cultural blindness. Now that's what I call the lower end of the continuum. So let's split up the continuum, everybody. Let's go. Let's split the continuum up. So the first part is the lower level of the continuum. This is the part where we don't want to be at. We don't want to be at cultural destructiveness. We don't want to be at culturally blind. We don't want to, not see people, not respect differences. We don't want to see our neighbors move in and they look different from us, and so we don't care for them to be in the neighborhood. We just want them to go. We wonder where they get the money from to buy a house. Why are they here? We see these are honest conversations. Or you tell your children, make sure you don't play with them. I'm being honest because I've heard these conversations. I told you the last time we met. I think I told you last time we met how one particular parent invited all my students in my class to a birthday party, except the one child who was autistic. A parent decided, I am going to invite all the children in Mr. Campbell's class, except the one child who is on the autism spectrum. Sometimes we like to go to these big terminologies. I just like to go to the more essential ones, the ones like love, the ones like respect, the ones like care, the ones like empathy. I want us to remember those values. I want us to remember those values. When I just started teaching at the TDSB, I'm going to tell you this, I'm a TDSB employee. And we were teaching the character traits. You do the same thing, the character traits. I kept saying to myself, should school be the place to really teach these things? The answer is actually yes, because it's intertwined in what we do. But I always say, and I'm not a parent, I want you to know I'm not a parent. I always said, if I were a parent, there is no teacher in school who would teach my child about honesty before I do. No, there's no, I would wait for my child to be in kindergarten, to be 4 and 5, for me to teach my child about honesty, to teach my child about kindness. I am happy the teachers are reinforcing it, but you best believe that my little child would learn about kindness and honesty and friendship and respect and love and care from home. These are essential character traits that we find them lacking in school. We have many children, we refuse to say, but we have children in school who are very selfish. They are very selfish. And I know as parents, you may be like, wait, Mr. Campbell, I am a teacher for 25 years, I can tell you. Very selfish. They wouldn't share nothing. And that selfishness, it comes to school and it's clear at school. It's very clear in school. And so we want to work with our children. And as you said right there, is the goal to raise a critical consciousness. The goal is to raise children who are critically conscious, who understand the world and understand and can make informed choices. Because this is not a message that says you need to accept everything and do everything and everybody needs to be in a circle. It's about respecting people and differences. So that critical consciousness, I love it. Absolutely what it is about. And so we go to the higher level of the continuum, the higher levels of the continuum, cultural sensitivity. Cultural sensitivity. I see what you said there, Cynthia. The simple words, the simple words. Remember, I want you to trust me a little bit. I've been doing this for 25 years. Let me just say this. I have taught in Jamaica. I have taught in public and private school. I have taught in the Bahamas in 3 separate set of private school. I've taught for the Baptist Convention, a Christian school. I taught for the Anglican board in the Bahamas, another Christian set of school, and I taught for the Catholic board in the Bahamas. I taught in the US, and I'm in Canada in many different schools because I've been a LTO by choice, which means I go around from school to teach. I've never applied for a full-time job. So I've been from school to school. And I've seen children who come to school, they are in kindergarten. They are kind, they are ready to share their pencils. They're ready to welcome each other. They're ready to say sorry, to say apologize. And they are children who have none of that kind of language. They would throw a tantrum if you take anything from them to share. They'd rather destroy a book than share it. I want you to understand, parents, that teachers, we see these things. And so, as you said, Cynthia, the simple words, the love, the kindness, the honesty, the selflessness are important to help our children to embrace others. Absolutely. They get to share. I've seen children who share in ways, and you just fold your arms like this as a teacher, and you just smile thinking, well, I don't take credit. That's parents. I've seen children in kindergarten, and I just go, that's the home. That's the home. I don't take credit. That's the home. So that's what we're talking about, having our children to go to that level where they understand difference and otherness. So we're going to wrap this up at the higher levels of the continuum, right there. Cultural sensitivity, cultural precompetence, so to speak, and cultural proficiency. Now, here's something I really want to share with everybody. I really want to share. So when I do this workshop a lot, I do this work, by the way, I do this talk quite a bit. If you go on my YouTube page, you will see maybe about 4 or 5 different versions of this conversation. And feel free to go on my YouTube page and see different examples of this. Feel free to do that. It's a public page. And I always ask people 2 things. I always ask people, where do you place yourself on the continuum? But here comes a trick, Matthew. I never ask them to tell me. I never ask them to tell me. I say, do not tell me where you are. You figure out where you are. And then there comes the questions I ask. What made you place yourself there? And that's when many people got the aha moment. I said, don't answer it. Just think about it. No answer, no outside response. Just in your reflection space. Where do you place yourself? Why you place yourself there? That's for reflection. And they would ask me, where do you place yourself, Dr. Campbell, Dr. ABC? And I said, I always place myself at the blue section, cultural competence. Why? But you've been doing this for years, long before it became popular. You've been teaching this topic for years. I've been doing anti-discriminatory work for years before it's popular. Everybody's jumping on the bandwagon now, which I'm excited about, but long before. So you may say, why? Because every day I'm still learning. I do not know a lot. One of my friends who I work with, he's Muslim and he's from Iran. And I work with another person. I teach with another person. And he said to me, oh, we're celebrating something. He sent me an email, a text yesterday, just to say he was celebrating something new. I have it right here. And he said to me in my text, he said, Hafsin, Haftin-SIN. And it's all about Haftin, the seven S of Iranian New Year. I have never heard about it before. Yesterday, March yesterday was the 19th, the 20th. Yesterday, March the 20th. It was yesterday or the 19th. Yesterday, March the 20th. Yes, was the first time I heard that word. The first time I heard that word. And he said at 11:33, we will be celebrating the spring equinox in Persian culture, known as Nowruz. I think it's Nowruz. He shared that with me. I'm now learning something new. I am now gaining something new. When I go to places, I went to Aruba and I saw how they cook certain things. I tried to get a fried fish with the head on. I mean, there are places that I have to go, but it's not anywhere near. Somebody tell me where I could go to get a whole fried fish with the head and the bone in, because that's not what they do a lot. They fillet quite a bit everything. We're open, we are learning. I am learning. I am growing. I don't know a lot about people who are from certain African countries. I have never been to the continent of Africa, but I'm going hopefully this year for the first time. I am excited to learn something. When I go to Ghana, I'm going to Ghana. I want to learn something, but a lot of my ancestors are from Ghana, but I don't know a lot of stuff. So we have to be open to that constant learning. In closing, I want to leave this with you. Culturally competent families. Easy. Nothing we said new. Is an understanding on others. It's value children's different capacity and abilities. Learning that the child next door, the child over there is going to be different from yours, right? Respect for differences in families and homes. It's about the cultural competent family, recognizing the diversity contributes to the richness of our society. Demonstrate an ongoing commitment to developing your own cultural competence with other families and communities. Learning. I love this picture, because if you look in this picture, this is a real class. We see someone teaching and exposing the children to different musical instruments. The person identifies indigenous, and they're sharing an indigenous music instrument and a music, but I want you to look on the carpet. I want you to look on the carpet and see the mix of children. I want you to look on the carpet and see the mix of children. They are learning about musical instrument, and I can see everybody as a shaker. I think they're doing some kind of musical class there. And this person there is First Nation, and he's showing them something else that they are not used to, that they may have never seen before, and they're sitting there learning. I want you to understand that is what I'm talking about. They're learning something through music. Their cultural competence has increased through music. Through music. I think I told you the story, I mentioned it before, about a school where the children were doing French class right here in Toronto. And the French teacher was absent. This happened about a couple months ago. The French teacher was absent, and a substitute teacher came in. This is a high school class. I think it's a grade 10 or a grade 9, I'm not sure, class. And a substitute teacher came in, and she was just teaching regular stuff. And she mentioned countries like Haiti and French Guyana and Martinique and Saint Martin. And she started to mention countries in Africa like Cote d'Ivoire and Democratic Republic of the Congo. And what she was doing was simple teaching, a French lesson about whatever. But at that very moment, she recognized that the children, the students were surprised that there were countries in Africa and in the Caribbean that also spoke French, because they were never told that. There was a lack of cultural competence. And this is not a new story I've heard. Another example I know of a fact is a music teacher was teaching music, and a teacher came in to substitute. And she mentioned that she showed them pictures of Latina and Black opera singers. And the students who were learning about classical music said they have never seen a picture before of a Black opera singer. Didn't realize that they were stars who were opera singers who were Black and Latina. Jesse Norman, Kathleen Battle. So we have to expose our children to otherness. We have to expose our children to otherness. So when they grow up, I see what you said, Matthew, and I'm going to go back to that. So they have a respect and an appreciation for otherness. Because I'm going to tell you what happened when they go in space where they don't value otherness, it comes out in their actions. We have seen it. As a Black professor, I am the first Black professor for many university students. I am their first Black professor for many university students. And there are research out there that tells you how much on the initial meeting a Black professor, they question their value, they question their qualification, because where they are from, they have never seen someone in that kind of power and authority in that color. And that is why these things are important. I've seen it before. I have traveled first class a number of times, and persons have looked at me as if I'm looking for the wrong seat. When I talk about first class to Asia, talking about that level of first class to other places, and people look at you as if you're in the wrong seat, because something assumed, there are assumptions and stereotypes that are built in how we kind of learn certain things about other people. And so what we have to do is to be intentional about unpacking those things and how we unlearn those things. And the last one, about culturally competent families and educators. They are role models. That's the word I wanted to leave with you. They are role models. So that cultural competence begins with us parents. Cultural competence. Last week when I was here, 2 weeks ago when I was here, I said inclusion begins at home. Inclusion begins at home. And I'm going to say the same thing. The growth in cultural competence, it starts at home. And we don't need to go into all the major theories and get to that level with our children as yet. If they are not there, we start with very, very basic conversations about respect, love. We start with the crayon box, the many different colors in the crayon box, the many different kinds of colors in the crayon box. We start when we take them to the museum, when we take them to the park, and we take them to the place, we show them difference around us, different kinds of people, and that they are also people. We also value them because they are also people. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for engaging. I hope this was another good session that as parents, you can pick something out of. Remember, this is not, you know, everything in this is, you know, important, and everything is 5 steps to do. These are just a conversation we are having. And I said to you before, there are 2 other presenters coming with other kinds of conversations. All of these are important for us because we want our children to thrive. We want our kids to thrive. So this has been recorded, and the recording will be shared with with everyone as we continue to grow in cultural competence. Thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much. Over to you, Michael, for your closing remarks.
Can you hear me now, Dr. Campbell?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much once again on behalf of everybody here. As I've said to you before, I could listen to you all day. We're very fortunate here at Algonquin Lakeshore Catholic District School Board to have had Dr. Campbell working with our staff for about a year now. And, I think, it's such important work, as you highlighted a few times tonight. I think for our staff, it gets to that idea of being role models. I think that, we as staff, we need to be open to developing our cultural competence because we are the models for the students that we have in front of us. And the families, as you alluded to a few times, play such an important role in that as well. And it's that partnership between, our system staff and our families that really support our children in becoming the great people that they will become. So your words, as always, resound with us, and I thank everybody for being here tonight. Our next session is coming up in April in this speaker series. The 2 sessions with DR.ABC, with Dr. Campbell, I will share through a school messenger the links to those sessions so that everybody can have them. And rewatch them and share them with anyone that was unable to be here. So with that, thank you so much, Dr. Campbell, for being here tonight. Thank you everyone for being here. I wish everyone a safe and happy night.